CMR Critical Mass Radio is a completely non-profit station where the hosts pay to broadcast their shows. The mission of the station is to get as much information as possible out to people about the world we live in, to unite like-minded people, and to try to come up with workable solutions. If you agree with the work that we are doing, then please feel free to help us continue by making a donation on the webpage. CMR is for people who want answers, because now it is our turn.
You're listening to Critical Mass Radio. Now it's our turn.
Okay. Hi Tim, welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about the works of Shakespeare, or the true author of the works of Shakespeare. I won't go into too much into that at the minute because obviously you'll be explaining yourself. But from what I can gather is that you've discovered a code in the works that not only relate to the period that they were written in, but also relate to the modern day monarchy of Great Britain and how it's all coming to fruition with probably the ascendance as the throne of William himself. So I won't give too much away, Tim, but if you could just give a little bit of a background to how you came about to discovering this code, please.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Yeah, I have a few. I found the code, actually. I didn't just theorize on it, I found it, and the code is it consists of wordplay, but there's another more sophisticated code that was discovered by Ignatius Donnelly, who is actually a U.S. congressman, and he was running for president at one point, and he authored a couple of seminal books. He wrote a book about Shakespeare's works, but he also wrote a book about Atlantis, and he was probably a Freemason, that would be my guess, and a lot of his background knowledge would be coming from his esoteric knowledge from that standpoint. But anyway, he found a mathematical word code in the Shakespeare plays, and it's in the Henry plays in particular that code is inserted. Yeah, so, yeah.
Would there be any particular reason why it would be the the Henry plays?
Yes, because that is his childhood story, or his youth story. The Henry plays. Prince Hal in Henry IV, Part 1 and 2 actually represents him as a young man, because he was, of course, a royal prince, but a changeling child of Queen Elizabeth I, who was farmed out to a prominent theatrical family. Anyway, the point is that in the code, he wrote a book called The Great Cryptogram, Francis Bacon's secret cipher code in the so-called Shakespeare play. And I've read the entire encoded script, and it basically outlines the covert operation to conceal the true authorship. And Christopher Marlowe was the first frontman to pretend to take the Bard ship, and then when he died in a tavern brawl, which may very well have been premeditated murder disguised as a tavern brawl. Anyway, then the authorship was transferred in terms of frontman posturing to Will Shakespeare, who was Edward de Vere, the Earl of Oxford's childhood friend through the Arden family. So in the Stratford area, where Will Shakespeare came from in Warwickshire, the families were connected because of the fact that they had met in childhood through the Arden family. And he was an illiterate, this Will Shakespeare, but his father was a glove maker and had attained some degree of success in his trade. So I imagine that they were just childhood friends because Edward had this particularly good disposition about him and seemed not to be so class conscious as other people, and I think he, from a very young age, liked to associate with people that were probably beneath his class, beneath his caste position. And of course you can see this reflected in his Midsummer Night's Dream, where he seems to delight in putting on entertainments with commoners, people who are beneath his social caste. And I think in part he lost his caste position within the English court because he acted in his own plays and delighted in hanging out with these people that were of the commoner class, because noblemen could not act in plays, nor could they write plays or poetry. It was considered to be beneath their dignity. And that was a worldwide custom, I found, from my travel, that all the European courts and all the Asian courts, all the way over to Japan, it was forbidden for a nobleman to write plays or to act in plays or to write poetry. It was considered to be beneath their social dignity, and so they all had to either write anonymously or using pen names, and I found that to be the case in Korea and China and Japan as well. So my theory is that there is a worldwide elite culture, and that it's not the case that we live in different cultures. The elites follow a common culture across the planet, and you can see the evolution of their particular class culture down through the centuries. And my belief is that their bloodlines are all connected, and their culture and their customs also. This business of Queen Elizabeth having 3 bastard children, some say 5, but the best biographer of Francis Bacon, one of her illegitimate children, Francis Bacon, was Alfred Dodd, who no doubt was a Freemason, privy to documentation and privy to research materials that probably gave him greater insight into this mysterious figure. But it looks as if Francis Bacon had this illegitimate birth and was farmed out as a changeling child to the family of Lord and Lady Bacon, and by adoption he became the brother of Anthony Bacon, and the two of them, with probably the assistance of their half-brother Edward de Vere, they founded Her Majesty's Secret Service. And while founding Her Majesty's Secret Service, they also founded the Honorable Order of the Knights of the Helmet, which was a secret writing ministry, also known as Fra Rosie Cross. And they also had a team of good pens that worked with them, 70 men from Cambridge University that had been recruited as researchers and writers, and they sometimes appeared only for the purpose of translating one European book into English and then disappeared off the radar. And they were called the Team of Good Pens, also known as the Wild Goose Club, because, of course, the attempt to discover who the author is a wild goose chase, because no one was ever meant to discover who Shakespeare actually was, at least not in their generation. There's evidence that the authorship was to be revealed in the centuries to come, that it would one day be known. I believe that date was October 28, 2011, when the film Anonymous was released and disclosed the fact that the Earl of Oxford was the real Shakespeare. I know the two brothers, the half-brothers, Francis and Edward, worked together, and it's hardly to be conceived as a one-man show, but the poetic genius that could use words in a way that no other bard ever has is definitely De Vere, because I've studied his early poetry where he wrote under his own name, and you can see definitively that it's the same gifted imagination and the same wordplay and the same gift of the poetic ear that you're seeing there. And when I look at Francis Bacon's sonnets and poetry, I don't see a poet's ear at all. Now, how it is that Bacon's plays have disappeared, I'm not sure what occurred there. I don't know how it is that they disappeared, but we know that De Vere also wrote plays which seemingly have never come to the light of day, but in my view that's simply because he wrote under the pen name William Shakespeare. Thomas Seymour was the father of Edward de Vere, and he was the stepfather of Queen Elizabeth and raped her when she was 15 years of age. And it was Lord Burleigh, the man who was known as William Cecil, who was Queen Elizabeth's guardian, if you like. He was a kind of guardian-type figure. He was the one who arranged for the secret birth to be orchestrated out in the country. And there's paintings, portrait paintings of Queen Elizabeth wearing a maternity dress. So she was no virgin queen. The reason she was called Virgin Queen is because that was her occult status as Virginia, Diana, Durga, the goddess of the moon.
Yeah. Do you believe there's a code in there, as in, like a type of Nostradamus, where there's a telling of future events, or there's a code, i.e. a warning, or are they again telling us that this is what we have planned and this is what we're basically going to carry out?
Yes, I think so. I think that they have probably got a code in there that I haven't yet found, and presumably Ignatius Donnelly has not yet found. And I would guess that, like the Bible code, there's one inserted in the Shakespeare plays, which is considered to be a Masonic Bible. The complete works of William Shakespeare considered to be a kind of Masonic Bible. They feel that it's their greatest literary masterpiece, that it's a Masonic orchestration that they're quite proud of. I'm not sure quite what to say about the spiritual status of the Shakespeare plays. I mean, I love them. I can't help it. And I tend to think that Edward de Vere, the Earl of Oxford, was involved in something that he wasn't happy with, and He was something of a whistleblower, and though he was assigned the task of acting as a kind of propagandist, and for example, Taming of the Shrew seems to be a play that's designed to be instructive of how the ladies of the court should behave themselves. It seems to me that he was undermining his own propaganda exercise. Rather than teaching the ladies of the court how to behave themselves, he was actually teaching them how to assert themselves and how to put their foot down and how not to put up with the nonsense. I think he was doing this in many, many regards, that he satisfying the professional obligations with which he's been given by, on the surface, seeming to write the propaganda play that he was assigned to write, but he was so sophisticated in his use of language and plot construction that he's actually undermining the propaganda exercise that he was given. So, in answer to your question, is there a code with the prophecy of future events being foretold? Yes. For example, look at Hamlet. He's talking about the royal court of England, and if you look at the geographical orientation of Denmark with Norway, you can see that Old Fortinbras and Young Fortinbras would represent Scotland, which is directly north of England, just as Norway is directly north of Denmark. So he's set the play for the English court in a geographical location offshore on the continent, and disguised the true reference. And what is it but a prophecy? Because he knows that the royal line is going to transfer to the Stuart line following the death of his mother.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be as in the Bible code where the future events that would unfold would be in the actual code as a lesson, i.e. whether it be diagonally, horizontally or vertically, where I'm trying to think.
No, it would be. There would be a code, just like Nostradamus. So yeah. I'm not sure that the code would be in the free verse. I think probably in certain speeches you will find that the code is there, and in the sonnets, because with the sonnets there's such a precision in terms of the mathematics of the iambic pentameter and the length of the line, allowing for only so many words to appear on each line, that there's ample opportunity for you to have a code inserted in the lines of poetry. And in some of the lines of poetry that you find within the plays themselves, there's probably a mathematically conceived Kabbalistic code inserted in them. I've never studied the plays from that standpoint as of yet. Perhaps down the road I will, but I'm sure it's there. But there's definitely a mathematical word count code discovered by Ignatius Donnelly, and I strongly suggest you get a hold of that book, The Great Cryptogram, Francis Bacon's secret cipher code in the so-called Shakespeare plays.
So in the sonnets, the meter of the verse or the lines would basically be like a chant, would they? They go as in the meter. As you say, there's only a certain amount of words or syllables that can be put into that meter in a line on a sonnet. So it would basically that would be the code in that.
Probably so, yeah. As I say, I haven't undertaken a study of it yet, but I'm sure it'll come up at some point where I'm going to find it. And I just find that as we gain more knowledge in our quest, we end up discovering things along the road that cause us to go down another avenue of research and study, and you know.
To me, it feels the same as I refer to I don't know, you do yourself, from a research point of view to the Bible, not a theologian point of view, that there's a story there to be told, that the story may be a genuine account of events, but because of the reading is so heavy and so hard for a lot of people to actually grasp. It's the same with Shakespeare's works, that the code may be in there, but because it's so heavy going, to read Shakespeare, I attempted it when I was younger, and it's not something that you can read like a Barbara Cowan novel, certainly not. You have to, it's a lot of concentration and a lot of focus that you have to take on it.
Oh, definitely. Like, look at the code that you find in the play Romeo and Juliet, the balcony scene particularly, and why is it that the most important codes are inserted in the balcony scene? Because in essence, all the world is stage and you and I are merely players, and the balcony is the perfect place from which to reveal your most important code. It's almost like the theater. It's almost like being on the stage. And so what do you have but him saying to Juliet, by a name I cannot tell thee who I am? And he speaks of using the cover of night as his cloak. And of course there's all this reference in that balcony scene to him not being able to use his real name and how he has to constantly hide his true identity and everything. And you have the sense that there's two rival families involved in a feud. And of course this is true because Edward de Vere had an affair with Anne Vavasor, who was the Queen's handmaiden. And of course that was a great slight to his mother, because to violate the privacy of the woman by having an affair with the woman who comes in every morning to dress her in her corset and comb her hair and brush her hair. I mean, my God, can you imagine a worse violation of the Queen's dignity than that?
Yeah.
And you know, so she confined them both to the Tower of London as punishment for their, you know, irresponsible actions. And Vavasor had his child. She conceived his child out of wedlock, and he became Edward Vere. They would not grant him the title of the House of Vere because of the nature of the illegitimate birth. Instead, he was known as Edward Vere, and he became a prominent parliamentarian. He actually was in the House of Commons and was considered to be quite a formidable politician, just like his father was a political man. And anyway, that family feud erupted because her uncle, Thomas Mabbott, was not at all happy about this and actually confronted Lord Oxford at the Blackfriars Theatre, where he and his players convened to do their play rehearsals, and challenged them to a duel. So Lord Oxford's men and Mabbott's men ended up having this duel along the River Thames near the Blackfriars Theatre, which would be similar to the conflict between Tybalt and Romeo's friend in the play, where you see there's a sword play and a kind of family feud rivalry going on. Now, when Lord Oxford is addressed in the guise of Romeo by Juliet, who's really Anne Vavasor, you can see she says, "What's in a name? That which is called a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, if he were not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owns without the title." Well, this refers to the red rose of the Tudor family, And though he can't bear the name of the rose, he still smells as sweet because he's got the royal bloodline of the Tudor family whose symbol is the red rose.
Awesome.
And then he says, like, you know, the same speech really says that he can't hold the title of prince, but yet he still owns the dignity of that title because he has the royal bloodline of the Tudor family. And then you get this long-winded speech where Romeo addresses Juliet and says, but soft, what light from yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick with grief that thou her maid art far more fair than she. Be not her maid, since she is envious, her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. Now, what this alludes to is the fact that Queen Elizabeth is known as the Virgin Queen. She is Virginia, she is Diana, she is the Huntress, she is the goddess of the moon, she's the chaste goddess. And so therefore she is the moon. And who is Juliet but the sun? Because this young maid of Queen Elizabeth is so much fairer than she that she kind of pales the moon in comparison with her glorious countenance, which is like the sun. So, in essence, he's thumbing his nose at his mother, probably writing these verses in Romeo and Juliet in the Tower of London as revenge, so that when the play is eventually published and performed before the Royal Majesty herself, she's going to be incensed and angered by his disguised references to her. And if she is sitting in the audience, you can just imagine her squirming in her chair uncomfortably as she realizes she's being insulted and slapped across the face by her own son. And there's not a damn thing she can do about it, because if she tries to say anything, not only is she exposing the true authorship of the Shakespeare plays, but she's also going to embarrass herself publicly, since she is the one who is being insulted.
Yeah. Very, very clever.
Oh, brilliant, isn't it? Just utterly brilliant.
So, would you say that the works, those a commentary on the events of the time and the people of the time, and also not so much a prophecy, but a comment on events to come future, i.e. the return of the Stuarts to the throne? Is it a case of both?
Oh yeah, I mean, not only is he not only does he seem to be encoding his own life in the plays and telling his own autobiography, but he also seems to be, as he said in Hamlet, "O cursed spite that ere I was born to set things right." He sees himself in the capacity of a kind of prophet whose job it is to, the times are out of joint. "O cursed spite that ere I was born to set things right" seems to be the import of the entire exercise, that the plays, including Hamlet, are being written because everything is out of joint, everything is awry, everything is out of kilter, and he has to set things right so that the ship of world destiny is on a proper heading, and the keel alignment of the ship is fixed so that it's not leaning too far to port or starboard. He's got to rebalance the ship of world destiny,
It's like the case of the prophet, basically, isn't it? His anguish is coming out through the works, but he's also compelled to reveal as well the information.
Yeah.
Or the true facts as they unfold, I suppose.
You're listening to Critical Mass Radio. Now, it's our turn.
Definitely. So I find it's a corrective therapy, and this isn't any surprise, because to me it's plainly apparent that an artist is a shaman, and they have to live the most timely aspects of their age and suffer greatly, because unless they suffer the injuries of their contemporaries, then they can't even hope to repair the harm through literary works that are conceived to shamanistically heal the tribe against the ills that befall it. You know, it can't help but see it as a therapy exercise that all art is conceived to provide some kind of healing balm for the injuries and the wounds of the tribe. So I think the works of Shakespeare are a perfect example of how a great artist tries to, through his literary works, achieve a kind of healing for his community or his society. The fact that he's named himself in honor of Pallas Athena, who was the goddess of Greek drama, who always shook her spear at the twin serpents of ignorance and vice, because the way you would enlighten the masses, the way you would enlighten and uplift the masses through theater and drama, basically by enlightening the masses, what are you doing but dispelling the serpent of ignorance and the serpent of vice? You're making a population wiser, and this naturally has the effect of dispelling those two evils, those two afflictions of the human condition, moral vice and ignorance.
So it seems that De Vere basically was a tortured soul, and through his anguish, to quote the bard himself, maybe has had to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, and also suffer a kind of ritualistic death, if you will.
Absolutely. A tortured life and a tortured existence, and even though he was born into the highest caste of his own society, he was flung into the lowest circumstances by his fate, and ended up in the end of his life suffering the worst torment and anguish possible for someone who's a claimant to the throne. He was exiled by King James to the Isle of Mersey, which is just off the coast of Colchester on the east coast of England, in the county of Essex. And Mersey is a penal island that's surrounded by a poison bog, so there's no way off. And so they faked his death, claimed that he died of the bubonic plague in 1604, when he would have been of the age of 53, and then he was exiled. In fact, King James even staged several Shakespeare plays on the occasion of his mock funeral, and then sent him off to the Isle of Mersey, where the deal seems to have been that you will continue to be able to live and to write so long as you do the bidding of the court and write plays that promote the ascendancy of the Stuart line and its true claim to the throne, and so forth and so forth. And so the last play, The Tempest, in the epilogue, he appeals to the king to let him return from his island exile, and obviously this may have enraged the king and caused him to want to snuff him out and force him into silence permanently by killing him, because I share this with you knowing that some people may not believe it, or might think that I'm some charlatan. I don't care. I just simply tell people what happens, and if they don't agree or they don't like it, too bad. I speak my truth. If they don't accept my truth, that's their business, but I tell my truth, and it's true to me. Let's just put it that way. I had a ritual with a friend who is a Native American, and he's got a Native American ancestry, and he conducts a lot of the rituals of his people, and he held a contacting the ancestors ritual with me in Seoul, Korea, over at his house, and he faced the 4 cardinal direction points and had some kind of a rattle in his hand, which he shook and did a chant in some Native American language, and then we sat down and we smoked Salvia Divinorum to get us into the correct brainwave pattern, I guess you could put it, to put us in the correct mood.
Mindset.
And so what happened, George, was I, in a pre-ritual standpoint, wrote down 3 questions on a piece of paper with which I intended to do some automatic writing in response to these 4 questions. And the first question is, are you Edward de Vere? Second question, did the Masons kill you? Third question, why? And fourth question, how can I avenge the death of Hamlet's father's ghost? Which was my Shakespearean way of asking him, how can I avenge your death?
Yeah.
So in the response to the 4 questions, I got yes, Masons play by writing. And you can even read that as a complete sentence. Yes, Masons play by writing.
Yeah.
And so that answers 2 questions. Why he was killed, because he wrote a play about Masons, and how can I avenge his death, which is by writing a play about Masons.
Yeah.
A screenplay, a film. And so at some point I hope to do so. There's another little story, and that is that 3 days later I had a vision that I woke up to in the middle of the night, in which I saw a coffin at the bottom of the sea, and the lid opened, and this white light came flooding out of the coffin, and there was seaweed dancing in front of the coffin in the oceanic current, the sea current. And I took this to mean that his coffin is buried at the bottom of the sea. And this is actually a punishment in Freemasonry. It's the 1st degree oath punishment. So when one takes the oath of the 1st degree of Freemasonry, if one betrays the order in some way, then one will die a ritual death by having one's tongue plucked out from the roots, one's heart torn from one's chest, burned to ash and cast to the 4 winds. And then one will have one's corpse buried at the mouth of a river where the tide comes in and out twice a day. So in the Henry plays parts 1 and 2, you can see the author entertains fears that he won't be given a proper Christian burial. And so I imagine that being so spiritual as he was, he probably had some feeling or some intuition or some prior visionary awareness, a kind of portent, a kind of prophecy of what would happen to him in the end. And this is why you see this fear that he entertains in the play, the Henry plays, that he won't be given a proper Christian burial.
That always seems to be the case in most ritualistic killings or deaths, is that the body's basically not laid to rest. I.e., the the hung, drawn and quartered. It's so that the body will not be buried intact and in full, and that they dispelling it, or not giving its spirit or soul a rest of peace.
Yes, George, absolutely. You hit it on the head. He lives under a curse, and when I wrote the sonnet claiming that he is the true bard and the true author of the Shakespeare plays, which I put with a portrait painting comparison, a composite comparison of the famous portrait done by John Taylor of William Shakespeare with the other portrait done of Edward de Vere when he sat for this portrait at the age of 36, and the Dutch painter Marcus Gerard painted him. I do a portrait painting comparison between the two men to show that it is the same man, and the reason that I think scholars haven't noticed the striking likeness between them is because he went bald. He lost, he developed a receding hairline and went bald later in life. So between the age of 36, when he sat for a portrait under his own name with a full head of hair, to the time when John Taylor painted the portrait of him under his pen name, William Shakespeare, he had gone bald on his pate in that time period, so it's not that obvious that they're the same man. But when you do the Photoshop and you give him back his hair so that you can see that, at least the hairline matches on both portraits, then the likeness becomes clear because you can see that he has this same very charismatic and unique eyes, the same courtier mustache and goatee and handlebar mustache, and the faint beard that he grew along his jawline was not there when he was 36 and sat to the portrait as Edward de Vere, but I think he became more and more bohemian. I think he rebelled against all of the rules of the court, and he seems to have adopted the dress of a commoner and seems to have rebelled completely against his own caste, and was by the end of his life the equivalent of an Elizabethan hippie, reflected even by his long hair at the back. Though he's bald in his pate, you can see his hair is very, very long at the back.
Yeah, wouldn't look out of place today, actually, or in the 60s.
Yeah. The legacy that he's left the world with, but I can't believe that his spirit is quiet and at peace in the spirit world, knowing that he's never in all this time received the full and proper credit for the authorship of the plays. I believe that there was a Masonic conspiracy to deprive him of that honor, and I'm not sure whether it was the orchestration of the satanic forces within the Catholic Church that were his enemy and sought his ruin, or whether it was an orchestration of a faction connected with King James within the Masonic Lodge system, or whether it was a conspiracy of his own half-brother, Francis Bacon, so that the credit would be transferred to him when the truth about Will Shakespeare was revealed to the world. Because Will Shakespeare, the front man, the one who pretended to be the author and was paid a handsome sum for playing that role and playing that part, he was illiterate, and the signatures that he had affixed to various documents show that he was not only unfamiliar with the pen and looked as if his hand was being guided by another, but he spells his name in different spellings and in different handwriting styles as well. And there's no way that, you know, someone of that distinction and importance would not have a fixed canonized signature that would clearly identify themselves, because it's necessary for their own legal protection that that unique signature be recognized as their own definitive signature, unmistakable signature. Shakespeare was illiterate. His own daughter, Judith, was known to be illiterate, and it's just impossible that the greatest literary figure of European history would have a child that was illiterate. That's just not possible. Oh, right, yeah.
Accepted?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, if he's getting all the fanfare and the publicity and the attention and lavishing, and, you know, glory, yeah, he's going to soak it up. I mean, the prelude to Taming of the Shrew shows beggar being conveyed into a lord's house and dressed in a lord's clothing and placed in a lord's bed, and then everyone comes into the room and starts treating him like a lord, and he's a drunk and he's intoxicated, and so when he wakes up in his his alcohol-induced stupor, he hears them addressing him as a lord, treating him like a lord, and you can see that he's living in the room of a lord and wearing a lord's clothes. He's so intoxicated and so bewildered that it looks as if this is a mind control operation in which he's slowly being conditioned to believe it. So I think that the delusional state of the man, Will Shakespeare, is one that was initiated by Her Majesty's Secret Service mind control exercise, in the same way that they used the mind control techniques known as MK Ultra programming today. They did it to him. And the whole play, Taming of the Shrew, is about mind control, because you can see that Petruchio is using exactly the techniques of a military intelligence agency in terms of brainwashing and programming Katerina, because he subjects her to food deprivation, sleep deprivation, and then confuses her senses by telling her it's day when it's night and night when it's day, which are the classic programming techniques used by military intelligence to brainwash a subject. So it seems to me that in the form of a comedy, he has actually explained the nature of the operation to brainwash Will Shakespeare and convince him that he's the true author, when in fact he couldn't possibly be the true author. He couldn't even write. Oh, there's one other thing that your audience would probably want to hear or want to know, and will be shocked to learn, and which was pointed out, so I understand, in the film Anonymous. It was alluded to in the film Anonymous, which came out on October 28th, 2011. By the way, Carl Kalaman and Ian Lungold, who are Mayan calendar scholars, believe that the true ending date for the Mayan calendar was October 28th, 2011, and so I find that striking in light of the fact that that was the very day that the truth about the Shakespeare authorship was revealed to a mass world audience with the release of the play Anonymous. So what can I say except that one of the most revered figures in world history may have finally found his rest on the last day of the fifth world Mayan calendar.
And not by chance.
Yeah, maybe. But the point I wanted to make was the Queen And Edward, her son, Edward de Vere, the changeling child that was farmed out to the family of the 16th Earl of Oxford, it appears that they had an incestuous relationship, and probably unbeknownst to the other members of the court, who would have seen him as just a archer and an aristocrat, and most of them probably wouldn't have known about the secret identity he held as the royal prince. Some of them might, but I don't know that this was known to the court. She appears to have had an incestuous relationship with him, and so you can see this in Romeo and Juliet, where you can see that the person that he was in love with and is talking with before he meets Juliet is a woman named Rosaline. Well, Rosaline refers to the line of the rose, the Tudor rose, to the Tudor family. And it seems that their child was Henry Wahwah, the Earl of Southampton, and the sonnet dedicated to Henry Wahwah. And you can see that in many of the sonnets he actually refers to a male figure as his beloved and his dear one. And this is because he's not because, as it's been speculated, that he was a homosexual. It's because he's dedicating the sonnet to his son. And this Henry Wahwah is the son of Queen Elizabeth I and her own son through incest, Edward de Vere, the Earl of Oxford. I know that's shocking, but not so shocking when we, as we discussed earlier, realize that these royal families have practicing incest for thousands of years, and the great royal daughter of the Egyptian royal family would marry the firstborn son of the pharaoh, meaning the firstborn daughter would marry the firstborn son to produce the next pharaoh. And they still practice it today.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it explains a lot to how they see themselves, not just in the modern world, but how they see themselves over the centuries, and how guarded they are of their own bloodline and lineage, and through their own folly, I believe, that much dilution of the genes and the bloodline. I think they've actually damaged the chromosomes in themselves, because they certainly do not appear to be anything like the common man. I've said on a couple of occasions, they just seem to be like a couple of different species to me. Maybe that explains it, because of the inbreeding and the selection. I don't know, it's something, it is fascinating stuff. But Tim, I'd just like to thank you. I've got to wind up there, and I'd just like to thank you for being on the show, buddy. It's been absolutely mind-blowing, some of the stuff you've come up with, and I hope we can carry it on again sometime in the future.
Oh, awesome. All right. Well, I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was great. You're a great host. And, we'll do it another time, my friend. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thanks, brother. Catch up with you soon.
Okay, buddy.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.